I hope you can hear me properly. So I think let's start now. So yeah, we're talking today about the Eco 25 and 27 kilowatt units, which we launched last year in September. So you might be familiar with our snap inverter range. So this is, so to say, the newest member of the snap inverter range. Let me first give you a bit of an overview of the inverter itself. So as you expect, since this is a snap inverter, it is or it comes, let's say, with all the monitoring inbuilt. So data logging, hardware, the Wi-Fi monitoring that you can commission it, as well as that you can see on your mobile phone or a smart device. Then the energy management function, the relay comes inbuilt, as well as very important, I think, for the commercial projects, it's the power control function. So if you come across project requirements of limited export or zero export, so that's this function is already inbuilt, as well as there is a requirement of connecting the system to a third-party communication system or SCADA system or something like that. So there are interfaces like Modbus, TCP, RTU, or other push services functions inbuilt. So no extra cost on that, but that's what you might know already from the other snap inverter range. That's basically no difference here. So the monitoring platform solarweb.com you can use, of course, as well as the smartphone monitoring, what you can see here in the picture on the right hand side. Another feature or character of the Eco is that they're extremely lightweight. There's very high power density in that inverters, so they're basically the same size as the Simo 10 to 20 kilowatt units, compared to other units on the market which are up to, let's say, 27 kilowatts. They are basically half of the weight, and that particular makes it easy to install. You know, when it's about lifting the device onto the wall where to mount it, it makes quite some difference whether either we use 2 or 3 people to mount it. Some people are telling me they do it alone because of this hinge technology where you hinge it in on the wall. Is pretty easy. I mean, I don't know whether I would recommend that, but well, it's an easy process. So another feature which you also know already from the snap inverter range is that the DC isolator that is inbuilt in the inverter is compliant with the installation standard. So usually there's no additional DC isolator adjacent to the inverter needed. Having said that, with the Eco 27, there might be some exceptions because of the rating of the DC isolator. Okay, I just get the message from some people who can't hear me properly. Just double check a moment. Okay, so I got the feedback. Thanks for that. Seems like most of the people can hear me. So in this case, it might be more on the user side if someone can't hear me. Okay, I continue with the DC isolator. So I just mentioned the inbuilt DC isolator is usually compliant with the installation standard, so no additional DC isolators are needed, so which saves balance of system costs. Some exceptions might occur with the Eco 27, depending on what panel are you using, because the DC isolator current rating, our rating is sometimes not except, let's say, the international current rating sometimes is not applying to the Australian standard. That doesn't mean that the inverter is less safe or something like that. It's just that the standard requires a different rating. So that's why, in worst case, so to say, you would need still the HAs and DCI as well. That's all. With the Eco 25, you usually see that that is fine. With having usually 4 strings connected, for example. But talking about installation and sizing and that kind of stuff, I'll come there about that in a minute. Yeah, also smart installation features is because of there is basically inside the inverter there's a bit of DIN rail space. So if this is a requirement that you have DC surge protection, so not to forget, mix it up with AC. So here we're talking about DC surge protection. So what you can do here on the DIN rail, you can plug on a DIN rail mount surge protection, as you can see here in these 3 pictures, and therefore you don't need an additional enclosure where you put the surge arresters in there. So that also saves balance of system costs. Another feature is I wanted to mention that there is a double pole fusing inbuilt in the inverter in the Ecos. So you also need, you don't need an additional fuse box somewhere to have this double pole fusing. So again, saves balance of system costs. Apart from that, the housing of the Eco, as well actually as the Simo 10 to 20 kilowatts, they come with an IP66 protection, which is pretty much the highest protection available on the market. So coming to some more features of the Eco, one major difference to the Simo inverters is that it has one MPP tracker. So that means you connect all the strings to one tracker. However, you also have, in terms of the monitoring, you've got 2 measuring channels available. So everything what you connect on DC1, there's like basically 3 connections on measuring channel DC1. 2 measuring channels are called then DC2. Sorry, the second one, and that allows you to give you already a sense of if there's, for example, string fuse blown, or if there's an issue with the string, because let's say it could be that if you use, for example, 3 strings, like 6 in total, then it would have a deviation, for example, of a third per measuring channel. So you can already detect if there's a string fuse blown, for example. Yeah, so to have the string fusing inbuilt, of course, you have these integrated fuse holders, double pole fusing, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I mentioned all the points from these slides already. Another feature which is in the inverter, which actually was not at the very first when it brought out, it came additionally a couple of months ago. It is the dynamic peak manager. That is an algorithm that can detect shading. So if you have typically in the early mornings or late afternoon a bit of shading condition, so this algorithm can detect shading, and therefore it can find what we call the global maximum power point, and therefore improve the situation a little bit. Of course, shading always has a negative impact, but that algorithm, which is switched on by default, it can improve the situation. Actually, this is not just only with the Eco, the other SNAP inverters have that as well. Yeah, the IP protection class 66 I mentioned already, so that's pretty much the highest protection class on the market. A few words on the ventilation system that sometimes people ask also. Actually, this is pretty much the most effective, most efficient inverters what we have. So therefore, there's only a little, a small amount of heat development, first of all, but still it needs a cooling, of course. So therefore, there's an aluminum heatsink at the back of an inverter. There's one big fan that sucks in the air from the right-hand side of the inverter and blows the hot air out of the top. Inside, it's also an inverter that's just for circulating inside of the inverter. Usually, the heat sink, let's say the outside air is hermetically sealed, so none of the outside air comes into the inverter. But to improve the situation, still to be on the safe side, there's an inside fan that circulates the air. Okay, I think the most interesting bit, that's what I think most of the people are interested in, is to hear about the system design, and that's what we get most of the questions. So if you look at the data sheet, the one thing that jumps maybe into your attention is the MPP voltage range. And if you look at it, there's a very narrow MPP voltage range, and only in combination with one MPP tracker, people often ask us, so wow, this is a really inflexible inverter. Why do you bring out this inflexible inverter? So, and the reason is basically this is a measure kind of to optimize commercial installations. So what you're gonna do to get flexibility in system design, you kind of combine the eco inverters and the SIMO inverters. So whenever you can fit typically, for example, 25 kilowatts on a Eco 25 or 30 kilowatts, for example, on an Eco 27, it depends, of course, which panels are you using, then you should use the Eco, and for all the rest panels, just go for a SIMO inverter. So that you've got a very uniform installation, you've got the same monitoring, the same mounting technology, everything is basically the same except maybe the inbuilt string fuses of the Eco. But what you gain is basically a flexibility in the system design at a very low cost, because what we can say is that the Eco is much more cost attractive than other inverters on the market, and that in combination with the SIMO, you basically gets both strengths of two worlds, the flexibility and low upfront costs on the inverters. I've got here an example. For example, when we talk about a 100 kilowatt installation, you can use, for example, I've got here REC to 60 watt panels in these examples. So, for example, use always blocks of 30 kilowatts. So 5 strings of 23 panels connected to an Eco. So therefore, we build 3 units. So that makes 90 kilowatts in total. Plus for the rest panels, so I've got here 39 panels left for going up to 100 kilowatts, and therefore I simply use, for example, a SIMO 10. So I've got the low costs on the 3 Ecos, and with the Eco I've got this flexibility. I don't know whether you've dealt with the TIGO platform recently, so with the TIGO TS4, for example, as well as with the other units what we brought out before. So we've got the possibility to have the flexibility already in the panels, so to say. So going with smart panels, you can use, for example, 3 Eco 27s, have a bit more oversizing ratio. Here go with 5 with the first Eco. You've got here on the left hand side, I've got 5 strings of 26 panels, so makes 33.8 kilowatts, and the other 2 go with 5 strings of 25 panels each, and that brings you close to 100 kilowatts, so 98.8 kilowatts. So, and with that technology, you could even save one entire inverter. If you, for example, have a situation where you have maybe a bit of shading on the roof, or if you want to maybe also have panel level monitoring. So this could be the solution for you, saving one inverter, but having other benefits by using the TIGO platform. As I said beforehand, to double check whether the DC isolator is compliant, I've got here an example. So the first one is using the Eco 25 with again this REC 260 watt panels. So I've got here, for example, 4 strings of 24 panels, so that it gives me exactly 25 kilowatts. So if I look at the current rating, so the maximum current rating from the PV array, which is I'll have to basically look at the short circuit current of the panel and multiply it by the amount of strings what I have, so I get the maximum current what can appear on the array. So that's 36.04 amp. And I look at the MPP voltage range at 20 degrees, so that's in this case 737. And therefore, I double check in the data sheet of the DC isolator. So I go with the 800 volts rating. And if I multiply the maximum current with 1.25, which is the factor that the Australian installation standard requires, as you might know. So I come to a number which needs to be same or smaller than this 45 amp at 800 volt, what the data sheet of the DC isolator tells me. So that means no additional DC isolators in this example here are needed adjacent to the inverter. So saves balance of system costs. If I look, for example, I'm using the same panels, the REC 260s for the Eco 27. But here I'm using 5 strings instead of 4 strings what I had before. I go with a string length of 23 panels, so I'm getting exactly 30 kilowatts. So here I have the 5 times the short circuit current rating of the panel, which gives me 45 amp. Here I've got the 23 strings 23 panels per string, which gives me a bit of a lower voltage. So with 706 volts of MPP voltage, I still look at 800 volts. It might be a bit of a gray area actually, but yeah, if you look at the 800 volt, it needs to be smaller than 45, and that's but it's already to like the value of 45 amps multiplied by 1.25 is already greater than the 45 amp rating of DC isolator at 800 volts. So that means you need DC isolators adjacent to the inverter. That does not mean that the inverter is unsafe or anything. It just means that the current rating, what we've got here in the data sheet, complies with the installation standard. The international current rating, what we've got here, is not applicable, and that's why we can't use that rating here, and that's why you have to use DC isolators adjacent to the inverter. All right. So I don't know, just look over to Miva whether she got some special questions about configuration so far. Everything okay. Answer so far seems. So in this case, I continue with the installation part of the inverter. I mean, everything should be, if you're familiar with Fronius, like Simos or even the Primas, for example, should be quite familiar with you. You've got the mounting bracket. So when we talk about, installation and ground mount installation, for example, you've got some options to do a pole mounting, but of course wall mounts easily with the many mounting holes on the back of the mounting plate. So one of the differences is basically what I want to show you here from the Eco. Since it is a single tracking unit, the dual pole fusing. So what you can see here in these pictures, pointed out, that you can see here. Give me 1 second. So here in this upper area, you've got the double pole string fusing, so plus and minus, so which is required. So the inverters themselves, they come without the fuses, they come only with poles. So what you're gonna do is you plug in the correct bolts, the fuses according to the panels what you're using, and that's basically it. There would be another option actually also for MC4 plugs, or a DC surge protection, as I mentioned beforehand. So would also be available at Fronius, but actually I have to say you can basically choose any like a thin rail mountable DC surge protection, what you can find on the market here. Type 1 or type 2, like this combi surge protection, for example. Here's a bit of close up. What you can see here. So here I've got on the left hand side, we've got for DC plus, and the right hand side for the DC minus connection. So as I said, usually you can run down the strings from the roof, connected directly at the inverter's terminals. In case you come across for some reason that you want to have a combiner box somewhere on the roof and run only one, let's say 2 main cables down to the inverter, then therefore we've got this DC connector kit, which you can see here in the picture below. So that allows, it's a kind of a bus bar that you can plug into the connection terminals, and there you can connect these let's say these 2 big cables, so to say. Pretty straightforward. Yeah, over voltage protection I mentioned already. So there's the possibility to use type 2 or combined unit with type 1 and 2 available at Fronius as well. That can be used actually either for the Ecos or for the Cymer, so that since the Cymer also has thin rail space available there. So if you come across projects which are really large or ground mount installations, we've got this possibility to go with the power package. The power package is basically an arrangement of multiple Cymer or Eco Inverters in conjunction with the AC combiner box and pre-manufactured cables. So it is basically an individual package what we can do or customize for you. For example, you can go with the inverters and the combiner box, but without the cables. You can choose from options that if you want to have MC4 plugs or not. Still go with the screw terminals, for example, and so on. And the idea is here, in particular when it comes to large scale installations, to have a quick way of installing it and mounting it. And this is basically what this video is showing you. I'm gonna go down the volume here. So actually that racking system, what you can see here in this video, by the way, does not come with the package. You can get it easily manufactured in Australia. That's the reason why we haven't brought that into the country. But everything else basically can be ordered from us. It's optional. So you can even combine, Cymer and Eco units here to get the flexibility in the system design. As I said beforehand, you can choose to use these pre-manufactured cables, monitoring if that is required, and so on. So it's basically a customized package what we gonna looking into the combiner box. You see here, for example, the fuses you can choose with or without fuses, and also different fuse ratings, as well as over voltage protection, like AC over voltage in this case, put here, or even a service socket, you know, if you want to plug in or use some power tools out in the field and you need a power point there, so there would be a possibility for that. Yeah, so that's basically it. One specific advantage I have that I want to point out still, our 10-year warranty promotion is still available. So you want to get an additional 5-year parts warranty on top of the normal standards warranty. That's for all string inverters, actually not just for vehicles, it's for all of them. And that promotion we still have until the end of June. So make sure to register your inverter online. So yeah, that's basically it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us now. But of course, you can always contact us either on via email. For me, it's Volker, sorry, it's Hader.Volker,